Now we'll get into the topic for today's webinar, which is risk management and how to do that using the Primavera tool. Now, what is a risk? Risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if occurs, has a positive or negative effect on at least one of the project objectives or more, such as scope, time, cost, or quality. Risk can have one or more causes, and if it occurs, one or more impact. Some of the examples are non-availability of resources, delay in getting environmental clearance, material procurement delays, right? It can be positive or negative, and it will have an impact on minimum one of the project objectives, or it can be also more. Now, when we do a schedule or when we create a schedule, there is something called optimistic schedule, pessimistic schedule, and most likely schedule. Optimistic will be the aggressive plan, pessimistic will be the cautious one, and the most likely will be the realistic plan. Or to please the customer or the end user, we create a plan which will fit to their requirements. That is kind of a political, you know, pitch into the schedule. Now, normally we prepare a schedule using Primavera or any other tool, and majority of the tools follow CPM or the critical path methodology, and there is one single path schedule which gives you a start date and finish date. It relies on combination of durations which are calculated based on the relationship between the activities, and it calculates and gives you a finish date. Now, how sure are you of completing the project on the specified end dates? Let's go back. Let's go back to the project risk management concept first. Then we'll come into this. Now, when we say risk management, there are six processes involved in risk management. First is the plan risk management. Identify the risk, then qualitative risk, quantitative risk management, analysis, then plan risk responses, mitigate. Right now, when we say these, sorry, plan risk responses and then the risk monitoring, right? Now, when we say quantitative and qualitative, in Primavera P6, either it's PPM or EPPM, you can do qualitative risk analysis. What we do by qualitative risk analysis is we give some values based on the perceived impact the risk has on the project, based on which the scoring, probability and impact, you have something called PI matrix or probability impact matrix. Based on that, a score will be calculated for that risk. Top 10 score risk are identified and taken up for further analysis. That is your quantitative analysis, right? Now, when we do a quantitative analysis using the PRA for the same project, let's say 10th December is the end date, we do a quantitative risk analysis on the project, and we find out that the 50% probability is 25th December 01, and 80% probability that it will be completing on 9 Jan 02, 100% probability that it will be completing on 25th February 02. The date which we had arrived at based on the Primavera scheduling, is only 17% chance, right? Now, how did it calculate this? There is something called Monte Carlo simulation, which we will see sometime sooner, right? The mathematical process which happens based on your inputs, that we will see now. Now there is a 10%, sorry, 17% probability that we will be able to complete the project on 10 December 01. Let's take another project which has two parallel paths and both are similar, both are completing on 10th December finish. When we run the qualitative analysis on this, the probabilistic finish date or the probability of completing the project on 10 December is only 3%, which means risk gets compounded, right? Okay. Now these are the uh, process involved in the risk analysis, risk planning, like what are the documents and other things which we need to go through and identify who will handle the risk, who will take actions on that, who will monitor it. Those kind of planning is done in your risk planning. Then identifying the risk, manually going through the different sets of documents and other things related to the project, wherever there is a scope or an there is an impact on any of the objectives. Then we do a risk assessment, qualitative and quantitative analysis. Then comes the risk response, then your risk reporting. We all know that risk is a uncertainty or an event or a condition which impacts any one or more of the project objectives. Now, the causes can be like bureaucracy or scope change, whatever it is. The impact will be on one or more of the project objectives like procurement management, and the project schedule may be slipping, time management. Those are your impact. How do people do risk management when using Primavera risk analysis or Oracle Primavera Cloud? You have something called a risk breakdown structure, wherein similar to your work breakdown structure, at the top level you have the risk organization level, then the various categories by which we are classifying the risk. Those categories are defined, and under that each and every category or classification is mentioned, and once you create a risk in the risk register, you assign this category into that risk, and that will help you in doing your risk management better. Impact of risk on the project objectives, right? So schedule, scope, budget, quality, performance, and others, these are all the core core project objectives. This is your probability and impact matrix or risk scoring methodology, wherein we define the scale, tolerance scale, probability scale, and impact scoring, right? So when you have such a matrix or scoring mechanism, we define every area. Schedule, should it be scored? Yes. What is very low, low, medium, high, very high in terms of schedule value you are going to provide? Cost, performance, scope, and quality, those things are also, part of the areas where we are going to perceive, or we see that there are chances it can have an impact on any of these objectives, right? Okay. Now, risk register is an area where we list down all the risk involved in the project, whether it is positive or negative. Positive risk we call it opportunity, and negative risk we call it threat. So that is an area where we define all the risk involved in the risk register, along with what is the impact on schedule, cost, quality, performance, right? And based on which the scoring comes up, and what we have to take mitigation response, what is the response for each and every uh, mitigation or the risk response, we define it, and then how to achieve that. On the left hand side we have the pre-mitigation timeline, pre-mitigation table, and then the mitigation part, including the cost involved to mitigate that. Then the post mitigation, what is the uh, table which contains the impact and scoring, right? And you also have a detailed mitigation plan wherein you can define step by step, these are the procedure or process to be followed, so that we will be able to achieve the objective, and every step may have cost associated with that, and that will help you in understanding what will be the mitigation cost. Okay, now what are the top cost related risk? I request all attendees to have a close look at the top cost related risk. It includes tight project schedules, design variations, variations by the client, unsuitable construction program planning, occurrence of dispute, price inflation, excessive approval procedures, incomplete approval, incomplete or inaccurate cost estimate, inadequate program scheduling. What are the top time related risks? Tight project schedule, design variations, excessive approval procedures, variations by the client, incomplete approval and other documents, unsuitable construction program planning, inadequate program scheduling, then bureaucracy of the government, high performance or quality expectations, variations of the construction programs. Top quality risk, tight project schedule. If you have noticed, in all the currently we have gone through time, scope, cost, and we are in the fourth one, quality. In all these areas you have something called tight project schedule, which is one of the chance for risk costs, causes, right? And also the incomplete or inaccurate cost estimate, unsuitable construction program planning, inadequate program scheduling. These are the constant things which occur across the different categories, right? Now, yes, we'll try to address that. What we do is we see a or the likelihood, we perceive that the risk may happen by 30%, that is your likelihood, and based on that impact, sorry, based on that probability, it will have an impact on time, cost, scope, quality, performance. We have created a scale, right? The tolerance and the impact scale, that in that we use the impact, and calculation of these two or multiplication of these two gives you the risk exposure, and we can actually draw a sort of a matrix wherein the low impact high likelihood and high impact low likelihood are in yellow, and low impact low likelihood is in green, high impact high likelihood is in red. Now what does this coloring scheme help us understand is something in yellow is manageable, something in green we can monitor it. There is nothing to worry, but still we need to monitor it. Something in red is really something where we need to take an action, right? Either to prevent it or ensure that the impact is very less. We need to take actions in that. So this is how our risk matrix will look like in your Primavera risk analysis. So what it means is we have pre-mitigation positions wherein you have the scoring mechanism and other things done. Then we go for post-mitigation. In between, we also add the mitigation plan. Then we go for post-mitigation, and both the cases we just see whether we are able to achieve the objective, and if it is achieved, right, or if it is achievable, then we go for taking it to the quantitative analysis wherein we are going to analyze the impact of these risks on our various objectives of the project. Before that, we need to prioritize. As I said, the top 10 risk, normally the top 10 risk is taken for consideration into the quantitative risk analysis. We identify the top 10 risk and then put it for quantitative risk analysis. Now, as I said earlier, in quantitative risk analysis, there is a technique which is used, mathematical and statistical technique, which is called Monte Carlo simulation, wherein the uncertainty at the detail level are taken into their potential impact on the objectives that are expressed at the project level, right? Giving an example, it will help you in answering the following questions. What is the chance of finishing the project on time, within budget, with will there be any impact on the completion date? Then what are the top 10 activities which will have an impact on my project? Schedule delay, cost overrun, right? All these questions you will be able to answer when you run a Monte Carlo simulation. Now, how does it work? You have minimum and maximum values given for every activity, both in terms of duration as well as the resource cost. You have minimum and maximum, and in between these boundary values, you will be selecting something called most likely, right? Now there will be different number of iterations. Let's say 1000 iterations. Every time it picks a ball from the this pattern, and which value it picks, based on that many iterations this value has been picked, so that becomes your likely, right? Wherever it's the majority of the value, that becomes your likely, and minimum maximum are determined by you. The 3-point estimate which we are going to give can be on both duration, cost, resource units, all three areas it can be applied. And the distribution also, you have various options, we can use it. Now in PRA, we have addressed one part, which is your uncertainty in terms of estimate, whether it is in durations or whether it is in cost or whether it is in resource units. We have handled that. Now comes the next step, whether a task exists or not. We are going into the detailing level. First one is the uncertainty at the topmost level, wherein the estimates made on duration, cost, or resource units are handled. Now, if then else condition, sort of an if then else condition. Task exists and uncertainty is used for applying that if then else condition in the Primavera risk analysis. What if I find rock, right? So my plan of action will be different, right? Okay, now based on my choice, probabilistic and conditional branching, I have three options or three outcomes: outcome A, outcome B, outcome C, which then leads me to the next activity, right? This is called probabilistic and conditional branching. See here, what is the probability for each and every outcome? And if the task exists, then probability of taking an outcome and moving to the next action or the next activity, right? Now, so we have handled, one is the uncertainty, another one is the task existent, then the third one is the probabilistic and conditional branching. These are the different ways by which we can model the schedule or the project plan and incorporate the risk into the project, right? We also have something called risk register, where we have identified the risk events which may occur. Now what we are going to do is we are going to link risk to the activities, either the WBS level or at the activity level. Normally we connect it to the activities, and we are ready for running the analysis, Monte Carlo simulation, 1000 iterations, and you run it. Then if you see here, there is a minimum duration, most likely duration, and maximum duration. Values will be filled once the iterations are over. And at the end of a simulation, you have a distribution graph. This distribution graph tells us what are the completion dates for each and every activity over a period of time, and you have sort of a S curve, not a smooth S curve, but yes, you will get an S curve indicating the deterministic finish states P50 or the probability 50 case, probability 80 case, 100% probability, right? This will help you in identifying what is the 80% chance, 50% chance, 100% chance of completing the project on so and so date after applying the risk into the activities. Now there is something called tornado graph, which will help you in identifying the top 10 drivers in terms of duration, in terms of cost, in terms of criticality, duration, cruciality, schedule sensitivity. All these areas you will be able to identify the top 10 drivers, right? And majority of the case, critical path will be in the top 10, right? Same way, instead of duration, we can do it for cost also, and we'll be able to find out what is the optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely chances of completing the project on so and so cost. Once again, the top 10 drivers in terms of cost, and you can also get to know the cash flow, probabilistic cash flow, and it helps you in identifying the difference between what is planned and what is probable, right? Okay, now we have done the analysis. We need to take up some response action so that we can bring it under our control and drive the project towards the completion. For that, risk response actions eliminate, reduce likelihood, reduce impact, transfer the risk exposure. This is one of the, sorry, we have covered four parts in the mitigation plan. This is how to mitigate or transfer, avoid, mitigate or transfer the impact of a risk on the activities. Now this is a detailed one wherein we are trying to analyze how to reduce the impact, or rather the PI score, to our controllable levels, and for that what is the detailed mitigation plan, right? Target date, expected date, mitigation cost, status, post mitigation position, those things we can give it, and then we calculate the mitigation cost. See here, this is a very good snap where we can see what is the pre-mitigation before we take up any action, what is the current status of the risk on the project. Then what do we want to do, or what can be done to reduce the likelihood or impact of the risk on any one of the project objectives, right? We define it, and along with the total cost we arrive at a situation wherein we say, okay, from this stage we are moving to this stage with while spending so and so amount. Then comes your post mitigation, wherein after analyzing the impact of risk on our project objectives, we come to an assessment, okay, from this point we want to move towards this. That is your post mitigation stand, and in that, where do we want to have an impact or likelihood so that we don't have an issue with the project objectives, right? Okay, this is your target position, where we are now, where we can be, and cost of getting there. Well, it's pretty simple here, you will be able to understand. Okay, now the distribution graph, wherein we got a S curve, not a smooth S curve, but yes, it's an S curve. So you can have different scenarios enacted in the risk analysis so that you capture all the distribution curves, or the the S curves into a distribution analyzer, and compare the scenarios, wherein you will be able to find out, okay, from one of the scenario to the next scenario we are saving 169 days, and in another scenario we are saving 49 days. So which one to take it up, right? In terms of cost or in terms of duration, you can have any of these things, and then we start monitoring the project plan and ensure that the risk are under control, or existing risk are under control, and no new risk occurs, or if it occurs it is captured properly, and its impact likelihood is analyzed, and do a qualitative analysis on the new found risk, how it is having an impact, what are the mitigation actions, everything has to be done and it has to be monitored continuously, right? Now, I missed to say one thing. Even before starting the risk management, what we need to do is we need to ensure that the schedule is of a good quality. All right. In Primavera P6 EPPM, you have a feature called schedule checker. That schedule checker will help you in addressing the common errors which occur in a project and the standards defined as per the PMI or the uh, Project Management Institute defines some of the scheduling standards. Are they followed in your schedule or not? And how much is the deviation? Whether it is acceptable or do you want to reduce it? All those, you know, analysis can be done once you use the schedule checker. That will give you a report like whether you are conforming to the standards or not. Once you have that report, then you start working on those activities where there are deviations from the standards and try to address the gap so that our schedule is of good quality, right? Then only we start getting into the risk management. Now, the reason why we need to have a good schedule quality before we apply the risk management is if the schedule is not of good quality, then you apply the risk, the values what it, the risk management tool, either it's a PRA or a Primavera Risk Analysis or the Oracle Primavera Cloud, the values will not be helpful for you to make a decision on the project and then implement the same, right? So you want to have a you want to do the risk analysis or risk management using a tool and get a good output, then you need to have a good schedule in place. And to get a good schedule, we need to have a schedule check run and ensure that the scheduling standards are met. For example, no activity should be more than 21 days, right? Let's say you have an activity for 180 days, it's wrong. You have to break it down into 21 days activities, different activities, and then give the relationship and then maintain it within that 21 days. Then lead lag. This is something which also plays an important role. High lead or lag will have an impact on the calculation of the dates, and hence we should ensure that it is not there too much, right? Same as the total float and how many start to finish relationships and open-ended activities. These are some of the scheduling standards which are existing in the world. So we need to follow those things. Then comes your risk management, and you can analyze the different scenarios. One good thing about Primavera Risk Analysis is it generates and gives you the pre-mitigation and post-mitigation scenarios schedule, right? That's the biggest advantage with Primavera Risk Analysis. You don't need to, run a schedule once again and then create a schedule. You just say build, it builds the pre-mitigated and post-mitigated plans, risk-adjusted plans, and it gives you the output, which you can take directly to Primavera and start doing your project management part, right?